Today, we're going to talk about something that all over the world has become known as seed projects. Some call them love actions, some go by different names, but it's really basically the same idea. And what I'd like to do in the beginning of our time together is have you watch a video of a seed project that was done by 7 ladies in a cell group, a small group in a church in Kampala that decided to listen to God and ask Him what God wanted them to do to demonstrate His love in their community, the capital city of the country. And they decided, of all the crazy things, to hold a police appreciation day. Appreciate the police in Kampala. If you've been there, especially at this time, the police were known as being corrupt. They often bribed you when they stopped you. They weren't a group of people to celebrate. But they approached the captain of the police department and said, we would like to honor the police of our city. And he said, you want to do what? And they said, yes, we would like to show the police of our city that we appreciate them. And so he said, all right. So these 7 women went to work, and they conscripted the major city square, and they got the police to provide a police band. They got the choir from their church to come in and offer special music. And I want you to see what happened. Let's watch.
Kampala, Uganda is like many cities in East Africa. Lots of people and very few government resources to provide services. The police force there is undermanned, underpaid, and nearly always underappreciated. As in most cities around the world, the police are friends only when one needs help or protection. The rest of the time, they're viewed as bullying or oppressive, regardless of how well they may be doing their job. Because of these factors, the Kampala police force suffered from low morale. They typically saw the problem, but not the solution. The Kampala Pentecostal Church is a 7,500-member church with 4 services every Sunday. While the city suffers lack, the church is blessed with numerous resources and talented people and willing hands. One of the church's 600 cell groups recognized the force's low morale and determined to show the police the good they were contributing to the city and its residents. Banding together in a public-friendly group called Harmony, these 7 ladies planned an all-day event that would honor and respect the entire Kampala police force.
Harmony, together with KPC, felt that they could come up and do something in the community, reach out to the police, not only through counseling, but try to bridge the gap between the police and the community. So we decided on this, getting the community come up and get prominent people from the community, people with real life experiences with the police, to come up and say them and tell the police, yes, we believe in you, we encourage you, we know that you can do it, we know that you can do it better. Just like, we were taught in the vision, conference, in the world view, taking the love of Christ to the people so that they just see it in the way we live without starting, off by preaching to them. All the remarks, all the speeches that came out, indicated to us that they had received it, the way we wanted it, them to receive it.
Police Appreciation Day started off with a brass band welcoming police and citizens alike to the festivities in the town center. Special music,
Wama twandiba dene dembe lyaffe bannange. Aha twandiba dene dembe lyaffe ffenna. Bannange twandiba dene dembe lyaffe.
Hope that I can add something.
the Ugandan Minister of Finance and the American Ambassador recalled deeds of selfless commitment to the residents of Kampala.
First element of rule of law in any country is the police force.
And the mayor expressed his gratitude for the tireless work of the police force, also taking a stand against bribery and reaffirming the value and worth of the police force. Finally, the chief of police spoke.
You don't know how much your presence here has done in the hearts of these officers. You don't know what kind of new energy you have put in the hearts and minds and bodies of these officers out here. You are going to see more of us working hard, knowing that out there are people who appreciate what we do.
Later in the evening, a special dinner for the Kampala police force further recognized, encouraged, and challenged officers on the importance of their work. Then Eben McLaren from the Johannesburg, South Africa Police Force spoke about the combined impact of police involvement and church prayers on reducing crime. Today, the Kampala Police Force knows the residents they protect value their contribution to the city. Just as important, the residents of Kampala have a newfound respect for their police.
Today was a very important day because it is the first time we have realized that there is somebody within the community who can care about police and is ready to appreciate. And indeed has given us a motivation, morale to work even more harder than before. And now they have realized that we have a partnership with which to fight crime. So it is going to assist us in getting closer to the people so that we can be able to jointly contain crime.
Yeah, I felt great. I felt my efforts are being appreciated by the public we serve. I owe the public more. I have to serve them more diligently because they appreciate what we are doing. So we have to do as they expect of us.
God moved in Kampala that day. The police force noticed, the church's congregation noticed, and the community noticed. God worked through 7 ladies endowed with a vision of what He could do and how they could demonstrate His love to their world.
What did you see? Well, you looked at the expression on some of the faces of the police. they can hardly believe what's going on themselves. And as the testimony of some of the city officials was that this had a great impact on them. But the rest of the story is just as interesting as the first part of the story. And that is that after this happened, the police approached this church and said, could you hold a seminar or a teaching on ethics for our new police cadets? This is the police asking the community to provide training for its police. Then eventually that grew into family counseling for members of the police force. And the outgrowth of that, one little seed project, was tremendous. Now, when you look at this project, what you see is, we could never do that. Well, I want to tell you, these 7 women never thought they could do it either. But as they began to think and plan, God put things in place. Now, sometimes seed projects, and you'll see later on, are very small. But sometimes they grow into something that is rather major. So, as we begin our study of seed projects, what I'd like to do is just look at some of the biblical references to seeds and see what we can learn from those references. Look at the slide, and you see 5 scriptures there. And these 5 scriptures are some of the key references in an agricultural period during which the Bible was written that talk about seeds, and there are lessons that we can learn from each of these passages. The first one, Matthew 12:24, talks about Jesus is predicting his death. And he says, unless a seed falls into the ground and dies, it doesn't produce fruit. And the principle that we can learn from that is that fruit requires sacrifice. The fruit of our salvation is fruit, but it came at the sacrifice of Jesus' life. Sometimes when I look at the thousands of seed projects that I know of that have been done around the world, it seems like the greater the sacrifice, the greater the fruit. Sacrifice means giving up something that you would have used for yourself, and instead you use it for the benefit of others. A second passage, Matthew 13, the parable of the mustard seed. The lesson here is obvious, that nothing is too small or insignificant to give to God for him to use it to multiply and produce fruit. The third passage, John 4, 37 through 38, Jesus is talking about one sows, another reaps. Well, what's the lesson? One lesson from that is that each task is equally important. It's more fun to harvest. I like to use the illustration or the question of, what would happen if God called you to go into a new community where the gospel hadn't penetrated and to be a witness of God's love in that community? And you worked for years to be able to demonstrate, to express, to proclaim God's love. And then another missionary or church of a different denomination came in, and all of a sudden, the Holy Spirit began to work, and your hard work was harvested by somebody else. Would that be okay to you? Well, as a human being, we sort of react against that, and we think, oh man, that'd be tough. But what Jesus is teaching us, it doesn't matter who sows and who harvests. What matters is that we're obedient to the tasks that God has given to us. And so that's a very important principle that comes out of seeds. Another one is 1 Corinthians chapter 3, in which Paul says, God is the one who causes the harvest to grow. So no matter whether we plant or we harvest, we can't take the credit for it, because what we do is we give what we have to God, and he's the one that causes it to grow. The last scripture, 2 Corinthians chapter 9, is sowing generously. What's the lesson? The more generous we are, the more we sacrifice in terms of what we give in order to demonstrate God's love, is the more God is given glory. So, our generosity brings glory to God. These are just some very simple but really key principles as we look at seed projects. I'd like us to look, if we can, then about what is the purpose of a seed project. Well, there are two purposes, two primary purposes. And one is to give the church, a local church, a simple, effective, and proven tool to help the church begin to demonstrate. Notice the word begin is underlined in this slide. Because seed projects often are small. We don't see a continuation of the effort of the seed project always. Sometimes we do. But it's to begin to demonstrate God's love to people on the outside of the church. You know, it's important to begin simply. My grandson and I, a little later on this year, are planning to go to Spain and do a 100-mile walk together. And he and I started to walk together when he was just a toddler, about 4 years old. And I used to be someone who loved to climb mountains. I still do. Not too able to do it like I'd like to now. And my grandson, Christian, if I asked him to go climb a mountain with me when he was 3 years old, he would have said, "Yeah, Grandpa, let's go." And then if we tried to climb the mountain, he would really hurt himself, skin up his knees. And the next time I asked him to go on a walk with me or to go mountain climbing, he'd say, "No, Grandpa, I don't want to do that." Because he would remember that he tried to go with me before and it wasn't a good experience. And so seed projects are for local churches to have a simple tool that they can begin this process of demonstrating God's love to the rest of their community. And you don't want to make the beginning projects so big that they stand a good chance of failure. You want there to be a good chance of success so that as they've had these successes, they can begin to do larger projects. So the first purpose is to give the church a small, effective tool that it can use to begin to demonstrate God's love outside the church. And the second reason is to enable local churches to be proclaimers of the gospel in deed. Not only in word, but through the demonstration of God's love for the people in the community. I want to give you a definition of seed projects. So look at the screen with me and let's look at that, because I'm going to ask you to memorize these things. What are the purpose? What's the definition? What are the characteristics, etc.? Okay, well, let's begin with the definition. The definition is this: a seed project is a small, short-term ministry by believers, and it's done with local resources to demonstrate God's love to people outside the faith community. Okay, there are 4 parts to that, and you'll see in this diagram these 4 parts work together. A seed project then it's a small, short-term ministry done by the local church with the local resources to demonstrate God's love to people outside the church. Okay, that's the definition. Now, let's move on. There are 3 benefits. There are more than that, but there are 3 principal benefits to a seed project. The first benefit is holistic evangelism. Now, please understand, we don't do the seed project in order to see evangelism accomplished. It's a natural byproduct of the demonstration of God's love. When people are touched by Jesus through his disciples, through the members of the church, they're touched by the Lord's love, and that impacts them. And people are drawn to Christ. I get emails as often as once a week from people around the world that are doing these seed projects, and they tell me of the people who've been drawn into the kingdom, not because the church went door to door doing evangelism, but when they saw the demonstration and they were touched by the demonstration of God's love, they wanted to know more about what was it that caused these people from the church who were of a different religion to bless them. without any expectation. And so holistic evangelism is by demonstrating the Lord's love in the physical, social, wisdom area, people are drawn to the reason behind that demonstration. And that reason is Jesus Christ. The second benefit of a seed project is that it frees the local church from dependency on outside resources in order to do a seed project. If you're familiar with missions, contemporary missions, one of the great banes of missions in the past is that we have left a legacy that basically says, without our having intended to say it, is that you need the help of churches outside of your own local community in order to demonstrate God's love. You're so poor, you don't have anything that you can use to bless. Well, that's not true. What God calls us to is to give what's in his hand. Like the little boy at the feeding of the 5,000 on the side of the lake. He didn't have anything except his lunch, which he gave sacrificially and willingly to Jesus, who used and supernaturally multiplied what that little guy had done. And God is calling us to do the same thing. God is saying, give me what's in your hand. Don't wait for outside resources. Start with what you've got. It's not that outside resources are bad, but God wants us not to wait for that. And so one of the purpose or the benefits of a seed project, it helps us to begin to do things with what we already have in our hand and frees us from the mentality and the paradigm of dependency on the outside. The third benefit, and there are others, but the third one that I want to identify is that as we begin with small things, it gives us experience for something which is bigger. And so as we begin to get experience with, like with my grandson, walking through the park, playing on the swings and the chin-up bars, things of that nature, it gives him confidence to be able to go with me when he gets older to climb a mountain. Same thing is true with the local church. We may not have confidence to do something grand, but let's do what we can with what we have. And that experience builds and gives us confidence for something else. So there are three principal benefits, Holistic evangelism, number one. Freedom from dependency, number two. And number three, it's experience and confidence for something greater. Okay, so you can see those in this slide right here in a graphics form. It just helps to see it graphically and it helps to remember it. The three principal benefits, say them in your mind with me: holistic evangelism, freedom from dependency, and experience for something larger. What I'd like to do now is talk about 10 primary characteristics of seed projects, and we'll do that when we come back.